Okay, salutations. This is Mark Hutten, and I've got a few topics I want to touch on in today's podcast. Listener discretion may be advised. I don't know, we'll see. And this is unscripted. I do want to start this podcast off with talking about ASD spouses and how they are a visual learner. So just know that the person on the autism spectrum thinks differently than other people. They often have what is known as visual thinking. And while many of us think in words or abstractly, people on the spectrum think in pictures and films playing in their head. That's how they think, that's how they learn. They have a difficult time seeing a generic representation of, let's say, for example, a cat. And instead they recall exact images of cats they have seen in the past. If you can wrap your brain around that one. Now, some researchers believe that the way people on the spectrum think are a good way of compensating for losses in language thinking. Neurotypicals think in language. People on the spectrum think in pictures. And this is what often makes people on the spectrum good at building things and seeing the end product of something before it's even done. It's actually a brilliant strategy. So if you are on the spectrum, you want to use visual thinking to your advantage. You want to learn through videos, pictures, and other visual aids, and that'll help you learn just as well as neurotypicals while getting around any areas that you have trouble with. I had a man with ASD, and he said this, and I quote, "I think totally in pictures. It's like playing different tapes in a video cassette recorder in my imagination." Now, some people on the spectrum can manipulate the pictures in their imagination, which helps them learn different things. And to access spoken information, they can learn to replay a video image of the person talking to them. Now, in some cases, this does represent a slower way of thinking, but it generally gets the job done. Okay? Visual thinking often puts people with ASD in jobs that involve architecture or design, computer programming, engineering, and so on. Now, not only is their visual learning superior, but their learning memory is more intact than other ways of remembering things. Hello? People on the spectrum can create elaborate visual images of things as complex as computer programs, musical pieces, etc., and then can fill in the rest of their knowledge around that. Visual thinking, a beautiful thing. And that thinking is often non-sequential, so that pieces of knowledge are filled in like a jigsaw puzzle in no particular order. Let me repeat that. Thinking in the ASD individual is often non-sequential, so that pieces of knowledge are filled in like jigsaw puzzle pieces in no particular order. So, for the people on the spectrum listening to this, when you catch on to this method of thinking, and you've been doing it all along, perhaps at an unconscious level, it becomes easier to see the strengths that you have. It becomes easier to find ways of using the visual imagery to learn different concepts. So, that's my little speech on visual thinking and visual learning in people on the spectrum. Now, I have a question from an NT wife, and I'm going to summarize. She's basically asking, can people with ASD develop normal relationships, with normal being in quotes? The answer is, well, if we're talking about ASD level 1, the answer is yes, of course. But to have a normal relationship, it usually needs to be with the right person. And in some cases, that right person is another person with ASD who understands and has the ability to cope with the idiosyncrasies of another person on the spectrum. I'm not saying, oh, if you're on the spectrum, only marry somebody else who's on the spectrum. And sometimes that combination doesn't work, but at least both of you are on the same page with respect to one another's challenges. Now, some of the barriers to normal, if we want to use that term, relationships, include a sort of, we'll just call it extended adolescence or a maturity issue in people on the spectrum. This can mean that the person marries later in life and lacks some of the ability to have solid relationships until they're older than the average person. Some people on the spectrum have stated that they feel that relationships with their partner is challenging, in part due to their overwhelming need to focus on their obsession of choice. So they recognize that when they hyper-focus on their special interests for extended periods of time, it does result in some kind of a disconnection from their partner. I had one man with ASD told me that he feels that he lacks a strong interpersonal connection with his NT wife and has to make the conscious choice to put his focus on his wife to the exclusion of his desired focus of special interest. He said he's accustomed to being solitary and he finds it difficult to concentrate when others are around him, including his spouse. And I've often said, and I know it sounds sarcastic, I'm talking about husbands with ASD now. He's a solo player who just happens to be married. Here's a direct quote from a man with ASD. Relationships take a lot of work, notwithstanding one partner having ASD. The sophisticated relational skills required, along with certain more developed social skills, make relationships challenging for adults with ASD, particularly if diagnosed with it in adulthood. And there is some research that says that the divorce rate among ASD people is higher than in other groups. But, again, even people on the spectrum can benefit from neuroplasticity. In other words, they can learn social skills, cultivate some emotional literacy. I have a men's masterclass where we talk about that. So, if you can find a marital counselor who has some expertise in ASD as it relates to the neurodiverse marriage, there is definitely hope. I said definitely hope. I think it's fair to say that there's really no good statistics around exactly how many people on the spectrum develop normal relationships and how they find themselves unable to relate to a neurotypical spouse in an interpersonal and intimate way. But I think it's safe to say that those with good communication skills, improved social skills, those who have developed an emotional vocabulary have a much, much, much better chance to succeed in a neurodiverse relationship than others. So, hope that answers that question. Next topic, I want to talk about obsessions and rituals in ASD. One of the hallmarks of ASD is the development of obsessive thinking and the performing of ritual behaviors, which, by the way, are done to reduce anxiety. Yes, it's an anxiety reduction method. And this type of behavior can later meet the criteria in adulthood for obsessive compulsive disorder. In fact, a lot of people, I don't know the exact stats off the top of my head, with ASD also have OCD. And these individuals have an obsessive interest in a particular subject and very little interest in much else, including what their neurotypical spouse needs or wants. It's not uncommon for them to obsessively seek information about their favorite topic, and they become an expert on that topic for real. But that can also result in some inflexibility and rigidity because they have a strong adherence to certain rituals and routines. They don't like change. They don't like surprise change. They don't like interruptions. So if you think you have some OCD tendencies and it's getting in the way of things running smoothly in your neurodiverse marriage, there is hope there too. Cognitive behavioral therapy, which was what I largely use in groups, can be very beneficial. And that counseling approach can be helpful because it focuses on concrete behavioral and thought changes necessary to function on a day-to-day basis. I'm not big on medications, but if you have OCD, there are some that can take the edge off of your ritual behavior and obsessions, especially if it's used along with cognitive behavioral therapy. But as you know, no medication is without side effects, and the improvement may not be complete if you're just going to rely on drugs alone. But it may be worth the effort to try something at least temporarily until you can learn other strategies through CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. And the last piece of agenda in this podcast that I want to talk about is, and this is going to be offensive to some NT wives, so just be prepared. I'm going on record as saying that you have accused your ASD spouse of being insensitive, uncaring, selfish, narcissistic, perhaps sociopathic, etc., which tells me that you are uneducated about ASD, which means now you're going to download his behavior in a way that makes you feel like a victim, and that victim stance is what's making you mentally and physically sick. So, having said that, and by the way, I'm not making excuses for your ASD spouse here. He's not off the hook. He's very much on the hook. He's paid the price for having autism from day one. But if you have accused him of not putting enough effort into the relationship, a good 80 to 90% of the time what's going on there is he's putting in as much as he's able. And to your wife, go, I didn't sign up for this marriage. He didn't sign up for autism, okay? We can play that who signed up for what game all day long. Have you accused him of wanting too much space in the relationship? Okay. The chances are he needed it to recharge his batteries. To the NT wives out there, socializing recharges your battery. It drains his, including being around you for too long. I'm not saying you're a bad person. I'm not saying you're doing anything wrong. Your heart's in the right place. God bless you. Too many times, the NT wife has become his number one source of anxiety. Have you accused him of being a womanizer? Okay? What's really going on there, the vast majority of the time, is he's misinterpreting signals from other women. I know some of you think, well, you're just making excuses for him. Okay, you label it whatever you want. I've been doing this for a long time. I know a little bit based on thousands of anecdotal reports from both the ASD spouse and the NT spouse, what's going on behind the curtain. Have you accused him of ignoring your texts? Chances are really good that he was focused on something else, probably work. And it's hard for him to shift focus. Shifting focus is an executive function. And he has an executive function deficit in that area. It's hard for him to stop doing what he's hyper-focused on in the moment and switch gears. That's what's really going on, ladies. Have you accused him of wanting to get back with his ex-wife? That one's come up before. I would say that has more to do with your insecurities around the other woman thing. Have you accused him of not being helpful in the house and being lazy? Okay. I'm not saying he can never be lazy. I'm saying the chances are 80 to 90%. What's really going on is he gets overwhelmed easily and doesn't know where to start and needs guidance. But NT wives go, well, I don't want to have to tell. Why should I have to tell him? He should know. Okay, well, then you just stay on the misery path then, if that's the way you're thinking. Have you accused him of not being a partner to you? You know, we're not a team. Well, he's definitely not a team player. He learned how to go solo way back in the day when he tried to fit in and couldn't. He knows that he just couldn't do this social emotional game. So he did detach from the social world to a degree and hyper-focused on his special interest, which is a non-social or emotional nature. But it's also likely that team playing makes him feel vulnerable or unsafe at some level because he's honestly autonomous and independent because he's learned how to take care of himself and he doesn't trust people in general. And I know I am generalizing here to a degree. I'm just going on hundreds and hundreds of anecdotal reports from, in this case, males, husbands with ASD. Have you accused him of not showing you love and not giving compliments? Okay? He doesn't do emotions in the way that you do. You're the sensitive, emotional, neurotypical type, which is nothing wrong with that. That's the way you were wired. You're high in social and emotional intelligence, high in social and emotional skills, high in social and emotional needs. He is not. He can go all year and not talk about feelings. So it's not that he doesn't love you or doesn't care about you or doesn't have empathy or any of that. He's just not intuitive and emotionally reciprocal to the degree that you are. Have you accused him of having no emotion? Okay? He doesn't have the same skills as you to express them. If he has ASD level 1, he's going to have this little thing called alexithymia, which means he's out of touch with his emotions and out of touch with your emotions. It's not that he doesn't have emotions. He just doesn't experience them as deeply as you do. Have you accused him of wanting to deliberately hurt you? There's malicious intent involved. No. He's just being direct and not using emotion. He's lacking in some social and emotional skills. He has this thing called mind blindness, which he doesn't really understand how his behavior and his words impact others. Have you accused him of not doing what he said he would do? Okay. I'm sure that's happened, but not because he just doesn't care, because he's easily overwhelmed and forgets. If he has ASD level 1, he's probably going to have some degree of a working memory deficit. Lastly, have you accused him of not wanting to discuss the relationship problems? Yes, you have. It's not that he doesn't care about the relationship. It's not that he doesn't want to solve the problems. He can't find the words. You can find the words. And you have gone on very long with discussions, or I should say monologue, and introduced multiple bullet points into one conversation, sometimes while you're upset. Okay, well, he can't track that. He's at best, in the heat of the moment, only able to listen to 80% of what you're saying. Will probably only understand 60% of that, and probably only retain 40% of that, and probably only follow through with what you're asking him to do, maybe at 10%. There's nothing to do with lack of caring or lack of love. It has to do with ASD. I know that was hard to hear for the NT wives out there. And again, I'm not making excuses for him. He's very much on the hook and has been since a child. Now, on a side note, I do have groups, counseling groups. I have one for NT wives, that's Q&A. I have one for ASD husbands, that's Q&A. I have one for neurodiverse couples where both spouses are there, that's Q&A. I have a Cassandra Syndrome recovery group for NT wives. And to those ASD husbands who complete the men's Q&A group, they can move on to the ASD Men's Masterclass, where we take a deep dive for 6 weeks to look at the development of social skills and emotional literacy in the context of a neurodiverse marriage. Also, there's a join button below this video. If you click on that, for $9 a month, you'll have access to previous workshops that I've conducted with all the groups that I just listed. Okay. If you have any questions, email me. I'll look forward to hearing from you. This is Mark Hutten. Be at peace, people.